Hello, Steve White, Steve Arts 89. Well, I've been having a bit of fun telling stories about all the weird things that have happened to me in my life and paranormal experiences and spooky experiences and stuff like that. And I want to talk about one of the weirdest sort of experiences that happened to me that sort of lasted a few months. Now, I lived in Georgetown, Tasmania. I moved into the city and I moved into a hotel in Melbourne. I lived on the third floor of this sort of old, sort of Victorian sort of style, sort of old building. And there was a tram station right out front that would take about 20 minutes to get into the city, right into the heart of the city. So even though there were places nearby, I wouldn't usually go shopping in my area because it would take longer to walk there than it would to just get on the tram outside the door. Literally, I walk out my door and the tram stop was there. I just go into the city. So I did most of my shopping in the city, and I was always in the city because it was just so convenient. Now, one of the things that happened was in the Block Arcade there used to be a store called Morticia's, which was a Gothic store, and there was a lady who worked there. I think she might have lived above it, but she did work there, and own it. And she was always dressed in Gothic stuff and that. And I got my first Michael Myers mask from there. They had one of the original Don Post ones that I bought, and unfortunately I left it in an area that got sun part of the time. And I didn't realise, and it ended up looking like the Michael Myers mask from the Rob Zombie remakes. But either way, I'd often go there just to look at the jewellery and the clothes, and just to talk to that lady because she was interesting in that. And then one day I was just in there, and I just got this really weird feeling. And I turned around, and there was this guy standing right behind me. And he was just looking right at me. He was just right in my space, and he was talking to me. And he was interesting. He kind of looked like Kiefer Sutherland from The Lost Boys. He kind of had that blonde, spiky hair, and he looked like he had this sort of 80s retro sort of punk sort of look, and he looked like that character from The Lost Boys. And eventually he told me he was a vampire, and I'm like, really? What do you mean? Are you trying to tell me you're an actual vampire, or are you just one of these people that admires vampires and, people let them drink their blood and stuff like that, and, you dress up in Gothic like, and he was saying, no, I'm a vampire, and I'm like, okay, this guy's okay. So I just was talking to him. I thought, well, he's interesting. I mean, that's an interesting story. And then every time I went to the city, which was like all the time, I went every week, I'd be somewhere near that sort of area, and I'd get this feeling, and I'd turn around, he'd be standing right behind me. Every time I went to the city, he would find me and be standing right behind me. It's like he was stalking me and knew where I was, and he just had this weird vibe about him, like he'd just be standing right behind me, looking right at me, and he just was really focused on me, and it was just really creepy. And it started to become a thing because, like I said, this went on for a long time. Every time I went to the city, he would just appear wherever I was, and I'm like, I'm starting to think he's this guy. He's starting to convince me he's a real vampire because I feel like he's just appearing. It was just really creepy and weird. I'm not saying he was, obviously, but it was just so creepy. And eventually one of my friends came into the city with me, and he was there, and she met him because I told her about this guy, and she didn't believe me. She's like, yeah, okay. And she's just like, oh, this guy's real, and he's kind of scary. Because he was a big sort of guy with spiky blonde hair. He looked like this sort of punk from the 80s. He had an air of homelessness about him, like he just lived in the city, like the guys from, it was just really creepy. And we started walking, and he was walking us out of the city, and I was aware he was walking us out of the city, and so was my friend, but she wasn't saying anything. I'm not sure if she realised I was aware of this. And I know there'd been some university buildings that were being renovated and partially torn down. He was taking us towards those, and I said, at one point said, we're not going past this street. I know where you're trying to take us, we're not going there. And he said, okay. We just walked back into the city, and he walked in the city, and we just sort of got the tram and went home. And like I said, he kept appearing, and it really started to get to me. I started to feel like he was just just omnipresent or whatever. He was just always there. And there were times where I was in the my hotel, and they had communal bathrooms and toilets, and you'd have to walk down this long dark hall. And there were times where I was just in the bathroom, and I just felt like I would turn around, he'd be behind me, or I'd look out the window, and I felt like I half expected to see him just like levitating outside the window against the blackness, like the kids in Salem's Lot or something. That kid in Salem's Lot. He just really got under my skin. He just had this air about him, and he really started to convince me that he was supernatural because he just appeared wherever I was, and he'd just be standing behind me like he just appeared. It was just so creepy. And then just one day he just disappeared. I just never saw him again. And it was the weirdest couple of months of my life. And it did scare me a couple of times. I just felt like, even if this guy isn't real, he thinks he is, and what's he going to do to prove it? Like, would he attack me? Like, I was always in the city surrounded by people, so I wasn't really scared. I thought, what if he follows me home? Like, I was really scared sometimes that, like, I'd just find him in the hotel because it wasn't really that secure. It never happened. He just disappeared. Never saw him again.